Hello, welcome to today's EuroSTAR webinar, Introduction to Test Strategy with Rikard Edgren. My name is Paul and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before I hand you over to Rikard, there's just a few things that I want to bring to your attention. Rikard will present for approximately 30 minutes and that will be followed by a questions and answers session. If you want to ask a question, please do so by typing it into your control panel and I will ask it to Rikard. I'll now hand you over to Rikard to begin today's presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm Rikard Edgren, and today I will talk to you about test strategy. And I have one thing first you need to know, there might be some large horn sounds, and those come from my town called, it's the alarm system for towns in Sweden. So they get an alarm, and they do that the first Monday every month at 3 o'clock. So if you hear a loud horn signal, you can think, that's part of the test strategy to make sure that the alarm sound is working in Sweden. Just so you know. So the test strategy I will talk about is test strategy for one test project. For a project where you're about to test something and how you will test it and what you will test. So if you are attending in order to find out an overarching test policy or a test process or something, you might get disappointed. Or this might help you anyway, I don't know. But this is about strategy within projects. So what I will talk about is the stuff that I hope you see on the screen. It's in the upper left corner we have the question why. Why are we testing? What are we trying to find out with the tests we perform? Into this mix we get different types of things. We get the who will do it, when to do it, where to do it, what to test on, a lot of information that we need to gather to know what to test, and a lot of information getting out as well, the results from our tests. There are a lot of things people know about quality and risks, a lot of things we don't know about it. And in the bottom right we have the final question after the strategy is done. It's the how. How are we going to test this? For a more classic agenda, we have bullet number 1, testing mission, the reasons why we are testing. And number 2 is context analysis, how we find out what's important in our unique situation, all the things around us that affects what we're going to test. And the third bullet would be test strategy, what to test and how to test it. The testing mission. This is something that isn't talked about enough, I think. There are always testing missions. That's the reasons why you're testing, the reasons why people want you to test. But most of the time these are not explicit. They are implicit, and people might know about them or they might not know about them. And when we don't talk about them, we don't know if we're doing the right things. So the purpose to learn more about testing missions is because if you don't know what value we're trying to bring with the testing, it's very difficult to do good testing. And a definition that I've taken from Campaigner is that testing mission is the answer to the question, why do we test? So you can just ask anyone in an organization, why are we testing? And they would probably tell you what kind of information they want to find out, what they want to know about the software. But the mission is also given by people. And we should know that it's people who want to know something. And if you know who these people are, if you know the developers that will receive your information, or the managers that will make decisions about the release, you can understand what they want to know, and you can ask them as well. So that's a small homework for you to ask the people that are affected by the testing, what do you want to know? So a couple of decent examples of testing missions could be that we are testing because we want to contribute by finding important problems. Another one could be that we test to provide quality-related information, to give decision support to managers and other people. But there are also some really bad examples out there. For instance, that the test department is responsible for testing the product. And that's a sentence that doesn't say anything. It doesn't say what we're trying to accomplish. It isn't the real mission. It doesn't help us. So if we are to generalize the testing missions, there are sort of three types of main answers to why do we test. And the first one would be that we do it to find important problems. We want to know if there are problems with the product that we should know about. Maybe we should fix them, or maybe we should just find out a workaround. Or maybe we should just stop building the product all because it's too many problems. The second general mission is to assess quality, where we are more interested in the coverage of what we are testing, so we can say quality things about the stuff that we have tested. So you want to know what the benefits are and what the problems are and stuff like that, and you want to get the overall picture about the things that are important for that situation. So you want to ask your stakeholders, well, what you want to know about, which areas are you most interested in, and what is quality to you. The third general testing mission is because we have to, because testing is mandated by a process. Testing needs to be there, otherwise the company can't do what they're doing. They have to have testing. Quite a lot of the time you have all of these three, or two of these three, but all of them give a different sort of angle to how you approach your testing and what kind of information you want to get out of it. And the different missions will lead to different testing, or should lead to different testing. But at the same time, these three different general missions are interested in similar things. They are interested in bugs and enhancements, regardless if it's we are testing because we have to, or if it's a general quality assessment, or if we're trying to find important problems. Sometimes it might be performance that's most important to gather information about, or it could be reliability or usability or security. Maybe we want to find out important problems regarding how we adhere to a standard or a regulation. Maybe that's why we test, because we have to fulfill a standard or a regulation or something. So the different generic types of missions can lead to similar things that we're looking for, but we might look for them in different ways because we have different missions. Some of them may want to find out about benefits, what goods the software can do, because we think that testers can find out more truth about this than other people that don't have the time to look carefully at both the details and the whole. And in the bottom of the page I have question marks because there can be so many things that we really want to look for. And those are the things that you need to find out. You need to find out what the real missions are. Why are we testing? So one thing you can try to find this out is to use the SO trick, which is like sort of a variation of a part of the user story paradigm. And you use it when you have a very vague mission. For instance, you might have the explicit mission stating that you should test the product. So you add a so and you fill out with some details. Test the product so we can find important problems. Perhaps once again, so they can be addressed to get happier customers and fewer support calls. Now we're starting to get somewhere. We need more details, but we can have something to talk with stakeholders and they can add more information so we can take well-informed decisions. So product risks have been explored so we don't get unpleasant surprises. And then you know more about what the information is to be used for. And of course, the testing we do will be a lot better if we know what it's to be used for. If any one of you have seen me do a presentation, I'm pretty sure you have seen this image. It's my software potato. And I use it to explain how I think we should go about when we are testing software. There is a rectangle, white with some straight black lines. That's the requirements. Those are the things that we knew in advance that we wanted to implement and to test and to make sure that they work well. They are important, but they're only part of the whole story. So we have a very big blue area, which is everything, any type of usage the customer might do with any type of data, in any kind of environment, with any kind of needs or feelings, and any types of sequence and problems and obstacles and things that happen and the unexpected, etc. That's so much that we know that we can't test it. It's impossible. But we're lucky because everything is not important. There is some things that are more important than others, and those are symbolized by the brown area in the middle, the important stuff, the potato. So that's what we're trying to find out with testing. We want to reveal the potato so we know about the important stuff, if it works in different ways, in the important ways. And this is also something that the testing machine can tell us about. It can tell us about sort of very high level what the potato might look like. What parts of the product that are most important. What characteristics to look for, etc., etc. And then we need to do a lot of testing and learn a lot in order to reveal more of the potato. And you will probably never know the whole potato. And you will never know if there are more than one potato either. So to find out what's important, we want to talk to different stakeholders. We can ask them, what do you really want to know? Maybe we have to ask them many times. We also need to investigate different information sources that might be relevant. We will read specifications. We might take part in developing quality objectives. We might ask people what they're afraid might happen after release. We might spend a lot of time on understanding the technology and different tools. And this you can learn more about on Wednesday when Alan Richardson will have a webinar, which I will attend at least. You might need to learn more about the business and learn what the purposes are of the software and what different rules in that environment are, so you understand what's important about it. Maybe you have a chance to talk to the real customers and learn what their feelings are, learn how they use it for real. And there are many, many more sources. And together with Henrik Emerson and Martin Jansson, I have developed the 37 sources for test ideas document that is available for free download to get more inspiration on different information and different angles to attack the testing problem. When you get the testing mission, there will be some words that requires more investigations. For instance, people will say, we want you to find important problems, but you don't really know what important problems are. But they can be elaborated, for instance, with different examples. If you look carefully at patches you've done through history, different customer complaints, maybe you had a bad review in a magazine that you don't want to read ever again. Maybe there have been some big embarrassment of a spelling error of the product name or something. And also all the bugs you have, the important bugs. They are examples of what could be important problems. You can also have different guidelines that help you find out what are the important problems. You might have quality objectives. You might have an error catalog describing typical problems in your product. You might have a checklist of things you need to test. You have the requirements. That's a sort of an overarching guideline about what's important. You might have case studies and many other things that help you understand what important problems are in your unique context. And this is something to share between the testers, so you know what kind of problems that usually are important. But at the same time, you should be aware that new important problems are often very different from all the old ones. So you need to be able to use your senses to understand what's really important, both to test and problems to find. Now we're on to section 2, the context analysis, where we think about the project environment we're in and how that should affect the testing we do. This is from James Bach's heuristic test strategy model, an excellent document I think you all should read. One thing you need to know for your test effort is, what are other people testing? Maybe the customers have a big say for some parts of the testing that you don't need to test yourself. Or maybe it's really important that you test it before they do it, so they get a happy answer when they try it. There might be some things that are better tested by others. Maybe you have an extensive beta program that takes care of different configurations, and the testing only needs to look for the most major bugs, and the other ones will get caught by others. You don't really know about this, but you just need to find out, what are others testing? What are the developers testing? Are they really looking carefully to the different boundary values so you don't have to test it? It's very good to know about this. You should also think about the interaction you have with the developers. How can you help each other? Will you help them with their unit test? Would they help you writing some tools that make it easier and faster to test? What kind of information do they like? How do they like it to be presented? Etc. You also need to think about the test environment you have. And you also need to think about the project plans and the different deliverables that are expected from the testing. Now we're moving on to what should be tested. If you think about the product and what the product consists of, what in it will you cover with the tests? And one way to do this is to just take the requirements document and go by that. But if you believe there is some truth in my potato, you will also know that it only covers a part of it. And to see more what could be tested, I recommend the James Bach's SFD pot, which is a way to build your own customized model of your product, where each letter in the SFD pot helps you look at the product from a different angle. So the S is for structure, what the system is. The F is for functions. There you have the requirements, perhaps. The D is for data. You think about data. What are the product operating with? And the I is for interfaces, both the user interface and APIs and stuff like that. The P is for platform, what the product is dependent on. The O is for operations, what the customers are trying to do, what they want to accomplish with it. And the T is for time. How does product and the time interact? And these different keywords will give you a guiding to look at the product in different ways and hopefully get more ideas about what to test. You can, of course, make your own model in your own unique ways. And this is something you will have it easier. It will be easy to do when you learn more about the product and you know it better. When you know so much, maybe you don't need a model at all because you have it invisible in your head and you just discuss it over a whiteboard. Another part of the context is the different quality characteristics. What kind of quality that is important for your software. And to help you with this, I have created a poster together with Emerson and Johnson that describes different kinds of quality characteristics. And this is an extensions of James Bach's quality criteria, where we have added more details to the different categories. And this is also available for download. I won't read all of this right now because it will take too much time. But I can go over the main categories, which are capability, what the product can do, the reliability, if you can trust the product, also under difficult circumstances, the usability, if the product is easy to use. And the different subcategories here, they help you to understand what you really mean with usability. Because this is one thing that many people say, yeah, usability is really important. And one person talks about the first-time users, if it's easy to get started. And another one talks about the power user that uses the product every day, that they can use it really fast and efficient. So the different subcategories can help you elaborate what the quality characteristic really mean in your situation. The charisma is if the product has that special thing that makes people want to use it. Security is that it's safe and protected against unwanted usage. Performance for speed. The ability to install, maintain, and support the product. And if it's compatible with different operating systems and other programs and environment and stuff like that. So all of these characteristics are probably somewhat important for your product. And some of them are very important. And if you know which of them are most important, you can use that as a basis for parts of your test strategy at least. So you know, how are we going to address reliability in this situation? There are also a couple of internal characteristics, things that are more for the company that makes the product. If it's easy to support, if it's easy to test, if it's easy to maintain, or if it's easy to port, maybe to translate into different languages. And all of this together can be used to find out what's important about your software. So let's do some examples for reliability and think about test strategy for reliability for a fictitious project. So reliability is if you can trust the product in many and difficult situations. And one subcategory is stability. So for my made-up project, I decide that a strategy will be to develop a semi-realistic robot that can exercise the product over weekends with random data and built-in data integrity validation to also address the need for data integrity, that we make sure that the data is the same throughout the product. The robustness and the stress, the strategy is that we will push the product's important limits and investigate how well it recovers after provoked failures. And for safety, we will perform aggressive risk-based testing to see if the ZYX might damage people under special circumstances. These are examples that aren't really super good because they don't have a lot of the project details that you need in order to make a really good strategy. But they can show you different ways in order to use quality characteristics to drive your test strategy. So let's move on to the test strategy. The purpose of the strategy is to drive the testing, and we do it in order to reach the testing mission. And the definition I use of strategy is that it consists of guidelines and ideas that describe what should be tested and how. Some other people might mean a test plan or test process with strategy, but for me it's more within one project. What are we going to test and how are we going to test it? And I want to add details so people understand what you're trying to do and they can give suggestions. The strategy is not written in order to show how smart you are. It is written to communicate. And there are at least two audiences. You have the stakeholders the ones with emissions. They should be able to see what you're trying to test and how you do it. And you also have the testers that will use the strategy as a guideline for what to test. And the testers, you will probably have a lot of chances to interact more with, to explain the strategy and change it and adapt it according to everything unknown that happens. But the stakeholders, some of them might only read your test strategy. That might be what they base their opinion about the testing on. That might be your best chance to get their input so they can have better ideas about what to test. Maybe they will change the test mission because they understand that this is not really what we want. I was unclear. Let me say it again. So now I'll give you a little Barnum example of test strategy. And you might need to look up Barnum's statements to understand this fully. But the strategy could be that we will test new functionality as deep as possible and the old functionality more briefly. We will primarily use specifications and up-to-date risk analysis. If time permits, we will create automated regression tests. And the results will be reported continuously. I think many of you would agree that this makes sense, sounds pretty reasonable. But there's a big problem with that strategy. It's way too general, and it actually says nothing. There's no information about what to test, and this is not helpful at all. It's some generic guidelines that could fit for any project. And that's when it's a Barnum strategy, that it could fit for any project. It doesn't really mean anything. Your strategy needs details in order to be useful for real. So I will show you an example here, which I won't read because it would be boring. But you can read it now. This is a real strategy for a project for fire departments in Sweden, where they can calculate how much time it takes to go through different situations. And it's the best example I have. That's why I should show it. But it uses some details here and there. It mentions different information sources. It mentions articles and problems with it. It mentions some quality objectives. So it has some details. It is possible to read, understand, and stakeholders can say, this looks good, or you're not talking about this. We need more information about that. People can read it and also maybe help us with a challenge we have with an oracle. So every situation requires a unique test strategy. It is not okay to take another one and just switch the product name and some words. We need to really think about what do we need to do in this situation. So you want to have a strategy that's specific, and you want a strategy that is justified, so you do the testing that is needed in this situation. And you also need it to be realistic, so you don't promise too much. You say what you think you can accomplish. I also think the test strategies should be diverse. So lesson 283 from lessons learned in software testing is that it is better to test pretty well in many ways than perfect in one or two. And this also goes back to the potato, that you want to look at the potato from different angles. If you focus on one very small part and test that perfect, you have missed so much of the other important information. So you want, most of the time at least, you want to different testing strategies, different testing things to do, so that you find out more about what's important than just everything about a small piece. I think your test strategy will contain some information about what is important. Something about the goals, either for the users or for the project or for the test project. It might mention test techniques, how you're going about the testing. You could mention some test ideas that are really important and needs to be put in. There might be something about the information sources you will use, your oracles, maybe models you will use. Maybe you will have a list of quality objectives. Maybe your test strategy is 15 pages long, and 3 of them are about the quality objectives that the project had agreed on. You might want to talk about how testers should think when we test this project. You might want to mention different trade-offs, how you will know if you're going to do more of that or less of that. Your test strategy should be anchored in the situation, so you test what is demanded by the context. It should also be anchored in the management, so they get the information they need. And also anchored in the testers, so that they know what you're trying to accomplish and why. But at the same time, adjustable, because things always change. There always happen things that make you realize that this strategy wasn't enough. So it's not easy to write a good strategy to satisfy all these different needs and at the same time be possible to change whatever happens. But maybe that's why testing is so much fun, because it's very difficult when things are happening. And we do the best we can. And also, the strategy you have is, there is one strategy that is written, it's a document somewhere, but there is also a strategy that's mental and in your head. Maybe it's in the discussions between the testers and the project manager, or whatever. And this strategy is always changing a little bit. And I think you always should have some sort of flavor of risk judgment, so you can focus on what's most important in the different situations. There is also a flavor of test design, that you think about exactly what are you trying to test and how will you test it. So I usually jot down good test ideas throughout the whole project, whenever I come to think of them. That could be in a meeting with anyone. I just realize, oh, we need to test that one. And I put it down on paper so I don't forget it. And always with a flavor of communications, so the stakeholders will get the information they need. And also so they can have suggestions about what to focus more or less on, so the testing can be improved. Because you know that the testing is never better than the communication of the results. If we test something perfect, but we don't communicate the results well, then the testing wasn't any good either. Because testing is about providing information, and the way we provide it is by communication. And in the word communication, also understand means that the message is understood by the recipients. So you should think about what to communicate and make sure that the most important things are understood. So, no webinar without the homework, right? So you can't have an exercise on this arena. So the homework will be to find someone else and team up and start thinking about your strategy for your product. And then I think you should come up with plenty of different ways to test your product. And you should suspend the judgment of these ideas and just write down an awful lot of ideas. So you have 20 or 30 or 40. And when you run out of the ideas, then you can start to look and evaluate them and think about which of these are really good. And this will be a way to try to come up with more diversified ideas about how to test your product. So now we are back with an elaborated image that we started with. With the upper left corner we have the testing mission. And I hope you have got some ideas about how to get it more explicit, how to know more about it, so you know why you are testing. And then we have the big area, which is sort of a context analysis, everything here, with the project environment, the product elements, information sources, the quality characteristics, which is misspelled at this page, I notice now. I apologize for that. And we also have test design that happens, where we think about how to test different things. And all of this goes on throughout the whole project. Somewhere we do, probably we write down the things we know at that moment. And hopefully we will have things like in the bottom right corner, that we have a grounded, anchored testing mission and a diversified test strategy and a lot of test ideas. And you also have a start for reporting with all of this. If you know the stakeholders and you know what they want, you have some sort of embryo to how to report the stuff so they can know what they need to know. And also, I haven't really mentioned that even though you have a testing mission that is super clear, this is exactly what we want to know, there are always things outside of that that they want to know, that they should know. So as testers, we should keep our eyes very open to look at more things than what we explicitly thought we were looking for. And when you're doing this, you're learning a lot about the project. And you're learning a lot. You have a lot of ideas about what to test and how to test it. And maybe you can start reporting right away because you know what managers are interested in. And a very good side effect, if you have had many conversations, is that you have stakeholders that know what you're up to. And hopefully they think you're doing the right things as well. So all of this is about the information that you gather and the information you get through the testing and share through your reporting. And it's about how you think. And even though there were some decent examples here, you need to think about this for yourself. You need to find your test strategies for your unique situation. But I have a very good recipe for this. It's that you do your best, you collaborate, and you learn to understand what is important. And that was my webinar. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm open to taking questions.
Yes, thanks, Rikard, for an excellent presentation. There's some questions coming in already. The first of those is from Marianne Lockley. How would the test strategy be applied to an agile test-driven development project?
How would the test strategy be applied to the agile result-driven development, or what was the last one?
Agile test-driven development.
Take a question once again. Agile test-driven development.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this of course depends on. I mean, if it's test-driven development, saying that the tests we write in advance, they are totally complete, and there is no need for any other testing. If that's the case, there is no need for a different test strategy. But if they have realized that there are more to this than just the tests that we write in advance, they probably have a tester on the team, then the test strategy, I think, should describe what we are going to test outside of the TDD tests. Those tests that where we investigate other things that aren't easily captured by automatic tests written in advance. It could be about reliability in different circumstances, might be about usability, or might be about strange sequences and things that are hard to anticipate, or might just be a good tester that have a good knowledge of the business that can critique the software in ways that matters. So I would say that I hope that all I said would be applicable for that situation, but if you have tests that are written in advance that prove the functionality, the basic functionality, you can do less of that testing in your other testing, and you can focus on the more interesting areas. And if this wasn't an answer for Marianne, you can add a question once again, and I will try to address it again.
Question from one of your fellow committee members for next year's conference. This question is from Marit PRV. I'm hopefully pronouncing the name correctly. I'd like to ask Rikard about creating test strategy for product that is built and delivered in monthly increments. How would he address these types of things in a team that works with the same product but different things coming into the product continuously?
I would write the test strategy every month, and I would do similar things, I guess, as I talked about, but I would do them much faster, and I would have a lot of the information I would already have, so there wouldn't be a need to look up different things because I already know the typical user base and stuff like that. So I would probably write a small strategy every month, so I can show everyone what we will try to test and why we're testing it. And I guess it will be different types of things depending on what we're building that month. And but I think the same type of things goes about for that situation as well. You need to understand what's important about that. Maybe you have a lot of tests that are automated, running all the time, which means that I can note that as a footnote in my strategy and focus on the other things that are important. And I also think that if I communicate my strategy, I will get more input from the other people in the project. So they can tell me, but why are we testing that manually? We should create a new tool for that, for instance. End of answer.
Okay, another question here is from Raja Hamad. How is test strategy, or how does test strategy help in test? Excuse me. How does test design help in test strategy?
Good question. How does test design help in test strategy? I think that the test strategy is often a guideline for test design, the test design that happens in more detail later. But in order to do a good test strategy, you probably need to do some of the test design as well. At least I do. So when I create a more general test strategy, I think about how I will do some of the tests when I'm about to do them. So I do some of the design at the same time as I do the test strategy. And I think that these two help each other. And I don't think maybe you have to separate the two and stuff like that. Now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that is probably not helpful. But it's important to, if the strategy is more overarching what to test and how, and the test design is more detailed, they help each other. If I know about the details, I know more about the whole, and if I know about the whole, I can do the details better. That's how I look upon it. But I should also mention that I have a very, very open definition of test design. For me, test design is anything I do in order to come up with how to test something. And for me, test design could be, I will I will talk to my grandmother and see if she understands this website. That for me is test design. But test design could also be, for this input field, I will try these 8 equivalence partitions. So test design for me can mean a lot. And maybe that's why I think that test design and test strategy are pretty close to each other and help each other in many ways. Thank you.
You can hear Rikard from Janet Lee. How is the test strategy different for testing embedded systems?
I haven't done a lot of testing of embedded systems, but I usually say that it's the same type of problem. You need to understand what's important and you need to know about how to test it. Often you have more advanced tools to measure things when you're testing embedded systems. So it's often more technical, but it doesn't have to be. But there will be some similar things to think about how to test this. If it's embedded physical, you will also have some physical aspects to think about, like what's your strategy for testing temperature? Do you have a lab where you can go down to minus 30 degrees to see if it works in that circumstance as well? If you don't have it, you need to have it. Can you arrange it in some other ways? Maybe you should go into a sauna to see how it handles high temperature. That would for me also be part of the test strategy. And when you come up with those ideas, you might identify, well, we need to have this in our environment, otherwise we can't test it. Apart from that, I think it probably is about the same. You find out what's important, why you're testing it, and then you come up with ideas how to test it and guidelines for how to test it. And not sure if I have any more really good things to say about embedded systems right now. So thanks for your question.
A question from Vaibhav Joshi. What strategy should one adopt in an environment where production issues are recurring in previously released modules or features?
Very difficult to tell because I don't know a lot about that situation. If there are bugs in production that everyone can live with and they are addressed and the customers are happy, maybe it's a good situation. If there are productions bugs that cost a lot of money and destroy the company's image, then you need a new strategy. And maybe that's a good point for when would you need to change strategy? Well, that's when things aren't going really well. That's when you need a new strategy. That's where you need new ways of testing the product. But also, the general situation with a lot of bugs in production, I don't really know why is that. I mean, it could be so many things. Maybe they have the version handling system isn't really well, or maybe they need new, more reliable hardware and stuff like that. But if it's a big problem, they need to change things, and testing might help. I mean, we are good at asking questions and coming up with new ideas. So, well, my general answer is if things aren't going well, you need a new test strategy, but I don't really know if this was a testing problem or a coding problem or a production problem of any other type. But thanks for the question. Good question.
A question from Predrag Skokovic. How do you find out what's important if you are not in direct contact with all stakeholders?
I didn't hear the last word. Direct contact with?
Sorry, with all stakeholders?
Yeah. It's much easier to find out what's important if you can talk to different people. But if you can't do that, then you do your best. And there are so many different ways that you can find out different things. I mean, the system in itself can tell you things. If you have used similar systems, you know that in this type of product, it's often important to do that. If the system makes calculations, it's probably important that those calculations are correct. If the system is a website where you know it's a lot of users, then performance is probably important in some kind. There might be written documents that can help you. If you don't have stakeholders to talk to, you can use the marketing material, the top slogans of the product. They tell you what's important. You can look at the help. You can often get an impression by just using software as well, what the main things are and what might be important. Maybe you know the customers and why they are using it. Maybe you can learn about the area where it is to be used so much that you can almost yourself be a user, so that you understand what's important about it. Maybe even if you can't talk to the customers, you can look at different discussion forums on the web to find out what people think about this software, if it's a public thing that many people are using. So you do your best and you dig up different kind of information sources that help you to realize what's important. That's my answer.
Rikard, we'll take one more question before we finish up. That's from Ansi Letela. Do you think deciding the way testing will be managed is part of test strategy? For example, is it test case based, session based, or something else?
I'm quite open to strategy that you can put whatever you want inside it. If you want to use test cases or use sessions or whatever you do, that's if that's part of the strategy or not, it's not up to me to decide. But if it's important and you want to make sure that the testers use that style of testing, then of course it should be in the strategy. And I think it depends on how much freedom you want to give to the individual tester on exactly how to formalize the stuff. And so the strategy should contain what's important to know. And it could be both for the testers or for other stakeholders. If the stakeholders thinks it's very important that you use test cases because they have promised that to someone, then you should probably put that in your test strategy. There could also be other kinds of documents that state these things more about how we test and how the process is for the company and the projects. So then you maybe not need to have it in your test strategy document. So, but put in the strategy document what's important, what you want other people to know, and what should be there. That's my answer.
Okay, thanks, Rikard, and thanks for a brilliant presentation. Thanks again to all who attended too. I'll just remind everybody before we finish up that we have a webinar archive on our EuroSTAR website where you'll find this webinar and over 50 others to choose from, and we also have a host of other resources including ebooks, videos, podcasts and presentations. And if you're not a member of the EuroSTAR community, please sign up today. Membership is free and it only takes a minute to join. This webinar is now over. Thanks and have a good day.